Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
I'm Jessie Cruikshank, and I've always been told I have a face for podcasting. So I launched a podcast. It's called Phone a Friend because each week I'll break down the biggest stories in pop culture. But when I have questions, I get to phone a friend. I'll phone a royal watcher to find out why Prince Harry is acting like a real housewife. I'll phone a tween to please explain Euphoria. And maybe I'll even phone a Backstreet Boy to find out if I still have a chance. I don't? Okay. New episodes drop every Thursday wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Hi, it's Dave here. This is my wife, Kathy.
Hello.
This is the Cinemile, the podcast where we walk home from the movies, and I got a question for you, Kathy.
Oh, okay.
Do you have the need?
The Need for Speed?
Do you have it?
I have it, yeah.
Do you have the need to watch a sequel 40 years in the making?
I'm also on a highway to the danger zone as we speak.
Yes.
And it's taking my breath away.
That's actually our walk home. It comes past the danger zone.
I'm so pumped with this movie. I can't tell you. I was pumped anyway, but like skeptical. And now all these amazing reviews have come out, so...
Pumped and skeptical
I'm
is
pumped.
two adjectives that don't normally go together.
I'm pumped and expectant now of a good movie. So there's a lot to live up to.
I was nothing but disinterested in this movie for years. It was supposed to come out before the pandemic, I believe. It was due to come out in the 2020, then it got delayed, It's been delayed for a long time.
But that's not the movie's fault, though.
No,
and the reason they delayed it was actually, I think, very positive, because they knew they'd a hit on their hands. And Tom Cruise is like one of those movie stars who's like, you know, full in on the cinema. He's a big screen star. He ain't putting nothing to small screen.
The man
and
can
he's
draw.
like on tour right now, just revving the whole world up about this movie. And like, I think he's kind of the last of that like superpower movie star generation, I would say, who'd be really pushing for a cinematic release on something like this.
And it's working. This movie is set to be one of the biggest Tom Cruise opening weekends of all time. This is Sunday as we record this. It is estimated to pull in more than $1 billion worldwide.
Avengers money.
But it's actually bucked a lot of, I think, the forecasts. Nobody predicted it would be this big, myself included. I didn't think there'd be much of an appetite.
No, I knew there'd be an appetite. We've been to 2 outdoor cinemas that have played this movie in the last decade. I think this movie is such a classic, and it just does the constant rounds. There's like 40 years worth of an audience ready for it.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like this. You know, they talk about 4-quadrant movies and having appeal to all generations. I kind of only see this having appeal in 2, maybe 3 of the quadrants. But I guess are parents bringing their sort of 10-year-old kids to this, maybe?
Probably. I don't know. I don't think I've even seen a trailer for it, so I don't know what the vibe is. But the original would have definitely been a family movie in its day. Like that was the kind of family movie people watch.
100% agree with you. And I also think I agree with you that this movie, the movie Top Gun, has had like an undeniable pop culture legacy, right? You know, and a like banging soundtrack, right? Like visual homoerotic images that we'll all remember. You know, oily volleyball scenes and Meg Ryan playing the piano. There's some really memorable.
Tom Cruise, like in his heyday, peak, and also it's so funny because when we went back and we've seen it a couple of times. One time we actually reviewed it for this podcast in the early days.
Which I actually Googled to make it easy. If you want to go back and listen to our Top Gun episode, it's episode 76.
Wow.
Scroll back
research.
there. And your sisters came with us,
that was
Elizabeth and Jackie.
An outdoor cinema experience. That was great fun. But like we all acknowledged that it wasn't actually the best of movies. It's a movie that's better in your mind than when you actually go back and watch it.
See, this has been my opinion for years, and I was just about to say it. And Top Gun's not a good movie. It really isn't.
But it has really good elements that you remember, and that's enough to make you go back for a sequel.
Top Gun exists as a series of collective memories in people's minds, and then like sort of an indelible pop culture package. But when you actually experience it as a movie for 90 to 2 hours, it's not good. There's very little movie there. It's also
really hard to watch now as a like woman in her 30s. You're like, as if that like awesome flight instructor woman would really have given it all up for this annoying young guy in his 20s who does nothing but show off.
Kathy.
And they have the most iconically...
He's a maverick.
They have the most iconically...
It's a terrible love
Terrible
scene. It's
love
really
scene.
awful. There's a lot of tongue.
Like, we've seen it twice in cinemas, and like both times the audience has actually shrieked in
Yeah.
horror because it's like these really prolonged kissing where there's like speck going between their mouths, and, like,
silhouette tongues.
everywhere.
It's like a puppet show of tongues, and it's gross.
So that really doesn't hold up. But the over kind of arching story element does. The other thing that doesn't hold up is we found very dull.
The story element does not hold up. Tell me right now. You tell me what is the plot of Top Gun?
No, I'm not talking about the plot. I'm talking about key bits from the plot, aka Goose.
But all you're everyone remembers Goose, and what happens to Goose?
Everyone remembers Goose. Everyone remembers Val Kilmer and his rivalry, and everyone remembers the love story, and
you
that's
could be
all
my
that
wingman
matters.
anytime. Yeah, but the rest of it is like, what's the plot? Who
Doesn't matter.
What is the incident? What is the third act of
The
that
third
movie?
act is terrible planes flying around in a terrible way.
And I gotta say, I got a lot of respect for Tony Scott, really good action director, and he made a movie that is full vibes. That's all this movie is. It's just vibes. The vibes were so strong
Steve, it was the 80s.
that we're still experiencing them today.
That's all it needed to be. It was the 80s.
It's like dog shit. Like action scenes in that movie, like it's just stock footage of airplanes cut together. Two guys with masks on, going, "He's on my bogey, 6 figures on your spot," and you cannot follow a word of it. Now,
but this is the C. I'd say they rectified it in
onto this movie. This movie, I am
Who directed
hopeful.
this movie?
Christopher McQuarrie did not direct it, but was heavily involved.
Why did you just get me excited?
Because that's what
for
makes me
saying his
excited.
name?
I know, but he was heavily involved, and I'm confident that this could be the movie that delivers the Top Gun action experience that I craved and never got.
Like, we're by friend.
I never got the speed. I had a need for speed, and I was never given it.
For anyone who doesn't know, we're like huge Mission Impossible fans on this podcast.
Yeah.
And Christopher McQuarrie directed
One
the last
of
couple of movies.
the best film franchises of all
Yeah,
time,
it's
better than
great.
Bond. I said it here.
So basically, yeah, that's why we're so excited, and we kind of have that vibe. And for all his flaws and like his weirdness, Tom Cruise, I love that he's just out there banging the drum for the big screen. And I love that he presumably, I'm just guessing, already flew his own planes and jumped out of planes for this movie.
Yeah, surely.
And I saw on the press circuit someone said, like, why do you insist on doing all your own stunts? And he said, well, would you ask Gene Kelly not to do his own dance scenes? And like the whole place just erupted. Like everyone was losing for him at Cannes. Like at this reserved film festival, everyone was literally losing it for Tom Cruise.
Okay, here's the director. I looked it up. Joseph Kosinski, and he directed Oblivion, starring Tom Cruise, which was okay.
This
and
is live movie
things like
journalism.
Tron Legacy and things like that.
Tron Legacy. Jesus.
Yeah, which was, I gotta say, pretty good looking movie, and it wasn't the directing that was at fault there.
Okay, anyway, we're rabbiting on too long.
Yes,
Let's go.
Let's wrap it up. Tom Cruise is amazing. I don't separate the man from the art. He's a genuine movie star and a big draw. I'm there for it, and I was not excited for this movie until all this buzz erupted around it.
I
and
bet you
now
€10.
I'm like, oh god, it's actually supposed to be brilliant.
€10.
And now I think it's going to be great.
There's a photograph of the guy whose name we're just forgetting that we were
Goose?
talking about. There's a photograph of Goose somewhere in this movie, and a teary look in Tom Cruise's eyes.
Okay, you haven't seen the trailer then, I take it, because
No.
I have. Right, okay.
But now that my other theory is
There's a
that
lot of
maybe this is
photographs.
in the trailer.
There's a lot of photographs of the original cast.
Other theory is that Miles Teller, who I love, is going to be Goose's son.
Okay.
So I'm glad Miles Teller's in this, by the way.
Question, the first. How many times do you think Highway to the Danger Zone will be played in this movie?
0.
I'm saying 1, possibly 2, hoping for 2, but at least once, and they'll probably put a sort of a modern twist on it.
Will there be a sex scene where Tom Cruise, right, who presumably drives up in like his motorbike with his leather jacket and everything,
non-stop motorbike.
Starts having sex scene, goes, wait a minute, I can only do it to this one song, and he puts on a record player and it's Take My Breath Away,
Here's my second.
and that's his Viagra.
My second prediction: no sex scenes in this movie. 0, not one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, Tom Cruise doesn't really do that
he
anymore.
won't do it, and no one else will. There'll be no sex in this movie.
But do you think he
Just-
could? Do you think
just
Maverick
fucking
could have
sex
sex?
vibes.
Could he have sex if Take My Breath Away was not playing on the gramophone?
I don't think it's possible for him to. No. All right.
Right,
We
on
better
that
go to
note-
this movie. Okay. Bye.
Everyone here is the best there is. Who the hell are they going to get to teach us?
Captain Pete Maverick Mitchell. Let me be perfectly blunt. You are not my first choice. You are here at the request of Admiral Kazansky, a.k.a. Iceman. He seems to think that you have something left to offer the Navy. What that is, I can't imagine.
With all due respect, sir, I'm not a teacher. Just want to manage expectations.
What the hell? Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking.
And we're off.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Hi, we're back. We've just seen Top Gun Maverick, and if it's your first time at the cinema, we don't do any spoilers until we get to Spoiler Street, which is about Mach 10 away from here. No, wait, that's not a distance. If we do Mach 10, then we would get there in probably 35 seconds.
My God, he's the fastest man on earth.
An actual line of dialogue.
That was amazing.
So that was amazing.
You did indeed feel the need for speed.
That was a brilliant film.
I'm like,
I loved it.
I think we actually just watched a classic.
Yeah,
It's a future classic.
It's just. Do you know what it felt like? This is how that movie made me feel.
It feels like you go 10 Gs, you go 90-degree angle, and you're scaling a cliff in your fighter jet.
Yeah, I was thrilled. I was nervous. I was invested in all the characters. I was invested in the outcome of the movie. The movie felt like a treat. It felt like it kept spoiling us. There was a bit where I was like, "Oh, the movie's over," and I'm completely satisfied. And then there was more movie, and it was even better. And
you
I
know
was
what
just
it does?
like,
It's so different from the first movie in this sense. So first of all, it ticks all the iconic boxes of the first movie, right? Before we get into that, what it does so much better, which that's a different league of the first movie, is it sets up a genuine mission.
yeah, yes.
It
There are
lays the
stakes
mission
from the beginning.
Yeah. And the stakes aren't just who's the best pilot in Top Gun.
Exactly.
Still. And then
But it also has
really
that.
clearly demonstrates, because even in a film that's shot as well as this, like, it's very difficult to follow what's happening when you're looking at aerial stuff, right? So, but it keeps showing us on a screen and on a map what they need to do. So at all times I can follow what they're doing.
And they explain the mission in like very clear stages and
Yeah.
detail. So and do you know what they also do? They explain the risk and the stakes at every available opportunity.
Yeah.
Like
in
they
the
literally,
first-
this isn't a spoiler, but they refer to the two stages of their mission as the miracle the first and miracle the second. And that little touch of just describing these two things that they're doing as miracles gives you it really hammers home how difficult and impossible what they're doing is.
So the stakes are so high, right? And then you've all Maverick's personal stakes on top of them.
Yeah.
It's so funny because before we came to see this, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to listen to our old review, the one of my sisters, to remind me what we all thought of the movie.
Go on, what did we think?
And because it was like over 4.5 years ago, I couldn't quite remember. We all at separate points were confused by, aside from the Top Gun competition bit, what they had all been flying about at the end of that movie, and we were all like, why were they flying?
I've seen the movie so many times, I still can't tell you.
But anyway, this movie's so clear from the outward. We know exactly what we're watching. Like, as soon as the movie started, I was like, oh my god, Jerry Bruckheimer, 80s music, Highway to the Danger Zone came straight on, and I was just like, oh, I feel like I'm in such a safe pair of hands with this movie.
Yeah.
It was just like 80s magic. Now I'm gonna say the thing where I think the movie, there's only one part of the movie where I think they missed a trick big time. So we've got Miles Teller.
Yeah.
We've got this kind of three kind of key pilots we get to know. So Miles Teller, I can't remember what his actual code name is.
Rooster.
Then we've got Phoenix, who's
Yeah.
the female pilot, which is a definite improvement on the first movie, where I believe, other than the instructor who he shagged, there was none.
Yeah.
And then there's the character Hangman, who's like identikit of Val
he's the
Kilmer.
Iceman.
But that's the thing.
Analogy.
This guy's brilliant, right? That actor, he did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
It all lines
Really
up.
good.
It all lines up with, if you continually want to compare it to the first movie, he's Val Kilmer. But they missed a trick. I just thought they needed to just do something a bit different. Like, I wasn't interested in seeing a Val Kilmer 2.0, and I think the other characters were evolved and different, and that one I was just like, you know what, I'm not interested in him. And like, the first movie was like, I remember it's another thing we talked about from our old review, like, it's just like an overwhelmingly white movie. This movie is more diverse, But at the end of the day, they only centered the storylines of the white people, and it just bothered me with that Hangman character. As good as the actor was, I just thought, like, it's a future classic, but like there's just a bit in there where you're like, lads, you could have just moved along with that casting there.
I did see, on that note, I saw a great tweet from Dave Chen, the podcaster, who said that he said two things about Top Gun Maverick. One, it's a brilliant film and it's one of my favourite films of the year. Two, it's very disappointing that there were two Asian characters, they don't speak, and they're called Harvard and Yale.
Oh my god.
Which does seem like a bit...
And then the black characters don't get much to say either. They get slightly more than the Asian characters, so that just annoyed me. And I can see they have evolved somewhat in the casting from the first movie.
Yeah,
they're not where they need to be.
It's a baby step.
So anyway, that annoyed me. And then outside of that, it as an action film is perfection. As a character arc, like Maverick's exactly where I would have imagined he would be. Like, he's so on point. And I think part of that is Maverick's such a classic Tom Cruise character. He's a character, like, before we watched the last Top Gun, I was reminded when I listened back to our review, we had just watched A Few Good Men, and we were like, wow, it's the exact same character. A guy with daddy issues who refused to play by the rules, but who's brilliant at his job. Like, Tom Cruise fits into that role so well. Like, that's like the role he's born to play. He's perfection in it. He is the right mix of, like, he's the best pilot in the world that ever lived, and yet for some reason no one wants to give him a chance to fly this mission.
It's because he's unreliable, Kath. He's a maverick. But
and they have all that stuff where, like, in this instance it's like Ed Harris and John Hamm, who were great, but again not, you know, particularly inventive casting. But they are like, you can't do it, and it's like, by God, but he's Maverick, he can do it. Anyway, I love the whole conceit of it. What do you think?
The film, well, it's like you said about, like, being slightly disappointed about, like, having, you know, an Iceman analog and kind of the same sort of setup in a way.
And his name was even a Hangman.
Yeah, it's half of man. But but
we get it. You're
here's
a
the
white
thing,
man.
right? All of these movies have to, and I mean, like, whatever you call them, Lega sequels or whatever. What did Scream 5
they
call
called them
itself?
Lega sequels.
No, they called it something else, like a requel or something like that. But they have to tread that
but that's
line.
when you're redoing the sequel, but this is the first sequel.
Whatever you want to call them, but it's a Lega sequel because it's a reboot sequel,
not a requel.
Right? I don't want to have this conversation.
You started.
I'm whatever you want to call them. The line they have to tread is, you know, kind of delivering that experience that made the original so popular and giving that nostalgia drug, that endorphin that we all love to experience, while also not feeling completely samey and giving you something new.
But
and
it has Tom Cruise, it has Goose's son, and I presume that's in the trailers.
Yeah,
and it has it's set in the same flight school, and they're in the same bar, and Goose's son is playing the same song on the piano. Like, I think they nailed the nostalgia for us
there. But this is the thing, right? It is a fine line, and I would say there only barely does it ever tip over it for me. And I think, like, the recent Ghostbusters movie, kind of as an example, went way over the line in for the first half and was just like, this is a completely different movie, and then swung way back the other side. No, it's the same movie. Whereas this, I think, I gotta say, it's a really tricky balancing act, and I think this movie does it superbly because it feels,
it's fresh,
exactly the same as like, it starts exactly the same. It's like literally like, here's the same song, here's the same title credits, here's
Tom
the
Cruise,
same
who
music.
kind of still looks
it's
the
like,
same.
but it's a statement. Like, we're not afraid to say that this is just a Top Gun movie, and we're going to give you what you want, what you like about Top Gun. And the movie is smart enough to look at Top Gun and say, these are all the bits that were good about it. And we're also, this is what I like, this is the other thing I like about this movie, it's unashamedly sincere. There's not
so sincere. I cried loads of times.
There's not an ounce of cynicism here, because a lot of, that's the other thing that a franchise like Scream or another thing would do, which a bit more cynical after 40 years, you'd probably do a spin on it. You'd either make it grittier or realistic, or make fun of the original.
But this is the
and
beauty
it doesn't.
Of
it has
such
reverence.
But
it
that's
has nothing but
left
reverence.
Such a long gap, you see. I think when movies have to start getting cynical and snarky at themselves is when they're in, like, multiple sequels later. And the first Scream, so Scream in itself was always kind of taking the piss out of itself, even in the first movie, because it itself was a pastiche of another genre. But now, when you're in, like, the fifth Scream movie, they've nothing to do but do that. But this is where I think leaving this really solid length of time for your sequel means you can come back with reverence. Your character, we haven't seen him in a long time. Granted, he's still in the same place he always was, but we're interested to see Maverick now. Like, we're not tired of it.
This
like,
movie,
if they did it again, I'd be like, no. But like, this is just perfect.
This movie is so reverential to the original Top Gun that I think about 60% of the movie is the characters just looking at pictures from the original movie.
Yeah, I said, I think there'll be a picture of Goose. I hadn't
feeling wistful.
anticipated.
Yeah, it's like most of the scenes are just them looking at pictures of the original Top Gun, which are probably on-set
That's not
photos.
most of the scenes. Now let's get to spoiler
But
street
sorry,
on this.
no,
Can we
but
get to spoiler
my
street?
other thing is, it did all that. It served up everything that was good about Top Gun and made it better, and then was just a superior film on every strike of the record. Like, I was absolutely, like, it felt like being transported back to the 80s in a good way, because it's an unashamedly sincere, over the top and kind of just like almost borderline cliche and cheesy kind of blockbuster, but with somehow just being like feel good. It made me feel good.
It made me feel good too.
Right.
Do you know, it wouldn't be at the level of it is now though if it wasn't for the Mission Impossible franchise, because every Mission Impossible gets better than the last, and this movie, obviously Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise, who are producers on this as well as on those movies, and like it's taken, I think, a lot of the learnings and borrowings from how to make a really fucking amazing action movie, and then this movie's not just a few leaps ahead of its predecessor. It's like it's 100 years away from its predecessor.
It's Mach 10 to the original Top Gun's Mach 4.
I love the way we don't know what Mach 10 is, and I was like, he has to get to Mach 10.
I always thought Mach 10 was like a razor brand. You know, it's like
I also think it is.
Gillette describes their razor.
Anyway, we have to go to Spoiler Street.
Yes,
Come on.
okay.
I don't want to spoil it.
So Spoiler Street now. Spoilers now. This is Spoiler Street.
And don't be like,
Spoilers
oh,
for
it's Top
Gun
Gun.
Maverick.
It doesn't matter if it gets
Oh,
spoiled
guys,
for
there's
me.
some surprises in
Yeah,
this for
it
sure.
does matter.
So go watch the movie firstly, because it's great. It's great to see at the cinema. It's awesome. It feels like you feel the speed. It's really thrilling. I really recommend it at the cinema.
We're actually
so go.
on spoiler highway on this one.
So, I almost sang it. Firstly, just on the Mission Impossible thing. So full spoilers now.
Spoiler.
I think that's a really good point that you make, and it actually you directly see that in what you said originally. That mission that they set out very early. It is a mission. It's literally a Mission Impossible, and it's got that the
It's like
same.
your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go between these two mountains that we're going to demonstrate over and over and over again how you do it.
Yeah, it's a set piece from any of those movies where they're like, here's the thing, we gotta crack it. It's inside in this impenetrable fortress. There's no way in except Tom Cruise has found a way in. And I love the setup of it. I was very throughout the whole. You get a sense of the training that they're the other thing. It's like a sports movie. They're training. They're getting a bit better.
But they keep showing us where they're fucking failing on the screen.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you failed at that bit because you didn't go low enough at that bit. Like, when I say in the last Top Gun movie, there's probably 30% of the movie I couldn't watch because it was so boring.
Yeah.
And unwatchable now, and it's not just because the 80s special effects, it's because they didn't set up anything for us. We didn't know what was happening. This movie, at one point I was literally knuckles gripped on the side of the seat, like, holy shit, is Tom Cruise gonna die?
I was like, I thought Tom Cruise was gonna die, I thought Rooster was gonna die, and that's the other
I definitely
thing.
thought Phoenix was gonna die.
That's the other thing that was really good about this movie, as opposed to other experiences you get at the cinema, particularly the Marvel movies, where you're like, I felt like any of those people at that end could have died. Like,
and they cleverly did it because they did it. They did it to Goose in the first movie. They could do it to anyone in this movie.
I thought
they killed Meg Ryan off screen.
I know.
Casual line there.
Anyone could die.
Oh, his mother's dead. I was like, oh, so you just didn't want to bring Meg Ryan back?
I also thought they were going to kill the two. Phoenix and Bob in this training exercise.
Yeah, I thought they were dead.
But this is the thing. The movie didn't kill anybody. Nobody died except Iceman. Which, by the way, was a beautiful scene. I really loved it. And
I loved it.
For anyone who doesn't know, Val Kilmer actually did lose his voice in real life after getting a tracheectomy after throat cancer about 6 or 7 years ago. So I thought it was just really lovely to see him back.
Yeah.
You know, there's a documentary out called Val about his life.
No, but I'd love to watch it
at the moment. But it made me want to watch it.
It was always one of the really, like, of course, you know, you can always be my wingman, or you can be my wingman any day, whatever that line is. like him and
Their-
Iceman, like the
Their
first
hug
movie,
at the end,
oh,
I felt like that was really touching. And again, it's not.
see,
It
that's,
didn't
I
feel
loved all that
indulgent.
stuff.
Nothing in this movie felt indulgent.
No,
It
because
felt
it's built on
bang
40
the
years
money.
of friendship.
Yeah,
And
it felt
you know,
authentic.
you learn throughout, the course of the movie that that Maverick always pushes it too far, like he always did. But because Iceman's now like the head of Top Gun or whatever, he always had Maverick's back, and like they've had this relationship where he has been his wingman. So that's really poetic, and that's why I felt like they didn't need to do that again with the Miles Teller and Hangman
Okay,
thing.
no, well, here's the
because
thing.
Because it's
No.
we get it, it's still happening in this movie.
No, but Kathy, I actually disagree with you. It's not the same. Rooster and Miles Teller are not the analogue for Maverick and Tom Cruise. They have the same sort of archetypal relationship of the nemesis, but it's actually the opposite. If you remember, Iceman chastises Maverick in the original for being what he is, reckless. He's not good as part of a team. Iceman is the straight and narrow guy. They've actually flipped it for this. Rooster is the opposite of reckless. He's actually too thoughtful. He's not going fast
Yeah,
enough.
but it's the same ultimate dynamic. Two best pilots in the
And
class fighting each
Hangman
other.
isn't the good team leader, which Iceman was.
Yeah, but it's still just the same thing of the two best pilots fighting and not being able to work together, and they're both white
It's
men.
totally different.
It's the exact same thing.
But nobody's
But
got a
then Miles
mustache.
Teller is kind of a blend of Maverick and Goose.
Miles Teller was ripped in this movie.
I found it
I'm
distracting.
used to him being kind of like kind of weedy,
Kind of
like,
normal.
Yeah.
But you know what I kept? You know when like you wish with Tom Cruise, like all the Scientology stuff's really off-putting, but it's been around long enough that I've pushed it out of my brain, and I just think of him as Tom Cruise, the movie star. With Miles Teller, I just read enough weird stuff about him in the pandemic.
Oh.
He was one of those celebrities that went really weird in the pandemic that I was like, Kathy, focus.
Oh well,
Ignore
I
the
don't know
pandemic
anything
stuff.
about that, but I thought he was great in this. Really,
I thought
really
he was
strong.
really good. I think he's a great
Yeah.
actor, but I don't know. It's an interesting role for him because he's such a star. So like, you can never shine brighter than Tom Cruise, and nobody in this movie did.
No, but
It wouldn't be
he
allowed.
holds his own.
But
so
yeah,
can we
he
talk?
really
Can we
holds
talk
his own.
about the two of them in the wilderness together? Because I didn't think that was going to
No,
happen.
but before we get to that part of the movie,
Okay,
I
go
want to talk about how good I think the opening setup was, because the whole like, this is exactly Maverick, right? They're doing this, we don't know, God knows what it is, we don't need to know. It's a plane that they're testing to get to Mach 10. If it doesn't get to Mach 10, Ed Harris is like, yes, I'm getting rid of all human pilots in the future and all of the planes will be flying by robots, right?
Which, by the way,
That was amazing!
I agree with him.
But also,
That's
but
like-
what I loved about it is it became this almost like...
No, but what I loved about it is a moment later they're like, actually, we have this mission that only humans could do because
yeah, but anyway.
GPS has been blocked.
But whatever the Mach 10 thing is, which appears to be a plane circling the globe, they're like, the argument was they didn't need whatever. What I took all of that to be, and I loved it, was like a metaphor for out with the old, in with the new. Do you know what, lads? We don't need cinema anymore. Everything's straight to streaming, and we
Yeah.
don't need movie stars anymore. And Tom Cruise is like, well, not today.
Not
And I
today,
was like,
Hollywood.
yes, Tom Cruise.
And then he's like, tracks for $1 billion
Because
worldwide.
I love on demand. I love being able to watch things on demand. I love that, like, now, you can catch Disney movies really soon after on Disney Plus with the kids. But, like, there is no substitute. If we had watched this movie at home tonight, we wouldn't have been a tenth
nowhere near
as
as
engaged.
thrilling. I was absorbed.
I wish we lived near an IMAX because I would have loved to see it in IMAX. But anyway, so straight in, the movie's like making all these points about whatever it is, whether it's you're too old to do this, or we don't need humans to do that, or whatever. And then Maverick is like, if I don't fly this plane today, all my team are going to lose their jobs. So for Maverick, the reason he goes and breaks the rule out of the gates at the first 5 minutes of the movie is not for selfish purposes. It's because he's altruistic, and that's why I just love how Tom Cruise is so po-faced about this stuff. Like, he can't let Maverick just
Which
be a
is-
Maverick. There has to be like this, I'm saving my buddy's job.
Which is actually quite what Tom Cruise was banging on about during the pandemic. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Would you remember that thing that went viral of him giving out to somebody because for breaching COVID regulations? He's like, I'm keeping people in business. This is our job.
Tom Cruise is like, I was put here on planet Earth to save the human race. Like, and that comes across in all of his endeavours, not in excluding his scientific or fucking Scientology ones.
It is this.
he's
This
so
perfect.
intense.
It's this perfect match of like, whatever it is. It's this sincerity and this belief and it's ego. It's like, it is unbridled
Oh, yeah,
ego.
'cause
And
by
I'm
the
talking
way-
about both Tom Cruise and
And
Maverick.
By the way, everyone, all the Hangman, Phoenix, and Miles Teller, and Tom Cruise, and I think all the rest of them, but particularly those four, By the way, they're really flying planes in this movie.
yeah,
So, like,
yeah.
They actually learned how to fly planes. Like, as an aside.
And there's the footage is them flying
Now,
planes.
A part of me is like, that's so fucking awesome. I love it. It's the coolest thing in the world. And then another part of me is like, oi, I flew Ryanair yesterday, right? Because I went away for a night. I paid €10 to offset my carbon. What is this movie doing to the planet and for our entertainment? And then I just had a bit of a sour feeling, and I thought, actually, Tom Cruise, if you're put on the earth to save the earth and you're the fucking messiah that you think you are, maybe consider the planet in your movie productions.
Yeah, Kathy, he's already saved the planet in the movie Oblivion by the same director. All right, what more do you want?
We should have stayed
did it in real life? All right,
we should have stayed till the end of the
actor.
credits. You know the way they normally say, like, no animals were harmed in the production of this movie.
Yeah.
I'd like to see all flights were offset in the production of this movie.
I mean, they could pay money to do that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but it doesn't really offset them.
All planes
Anyway,
were flown
I
all
feel
day.
less bad for
We
flying
got
to
private
London.
jets to everywhere.
I feel less bad for flying to London for a day.
Can I say one more thing, which I thought was interesting, and it's something I admire about the first Top Gun as well, is that I like that this movie deliberately never names the enemy or the country.
Yeah,
or
I like that too.
They separate the movie, and I think they separate it from politics. It also separates it from a time or a geopolitical status.
I had
And they
that
do the
thought
same thing in the
because
first
with,
movie.
Like recent news events, like awful and horrible and tragic news events, like between shootings in the States and between the war in Ukraine, I was watching this movie thinking, God, they really steered clear of like all
exactly.
of the controversy.
It takes you away from the grim reality of the world.
It's just like baddies have uranium.
But also, it makes it kind of less jingoistic, which was something that the first Top Gun kind of could have veered into, but kind of stays away from, because really they just laser it in on, this is a group of individuals who are amazing at what they do. They're pushing the limits, and it's all about teamwork and camaraderie, and that's what the movie's
There's just one
about.
line that we forgot to talk about Jennifer Connelly. There's one line where she casually says he was at both of the Iraq wars. I'm like, they could have left that out, but that's the kind of only reference to it.
That's
really
kind of okay because it's in the past. Like they mentioned the Korean War at some stage as
I
well.
guess. But what I like about the Jennifer Connelly casting is, in fairness to Tom Cruise, like he tends to have age-appropriate co-stars, and obviously in the first movie, actually the female co-star was older than him. Like he's not pulling out like a young, like if they had flipped,
He's not doing the
dynamic,
Roger Moore thing.
But also if they'd flipped the dynamic of the first movie and like he had hooked up with one of his students, it would have been so icky and gross.
Oh yeah, you're
so I'm
right.
glad they like never went there whatsoever. And in fact, they built in a pre-established relationship with a nice woman.
Can we say, okay, so there was, I think we're both right on the sex scene thing, because there was a sex scene, but there also wasn't.
But
right?
they showed us them kissing, and then they showed us them fully clothed afterwards under the
Which to
sheets.
me there was a scene in which sex was implied, but it was nothing like the sex scene from the original.
Am I wrong when I say I think the last sex scene that Tom Cruise was in was Eyes Wide Shut?
Probably. I mean, that was so over the top that maybe it put him off it for the rest of his life. The other thing,
I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a born again virgin.
The other thing we said.
That's just like his vibe, isn't it?
He's kind of asexual in a way, isn't he?
He's a born again virgin.
The other thing we said at the top was I said that Highway to the Danger Zone would play one, maybe two times. I mean, 2 seconds in, there was one. Then you spotted it's actually like was woven into the score orchestrally by the end.
It may have been in the first movie, I don't recall, but in this movie it kept creeping in there. I was like,
which I loved. Yeah.
And then I was
but
like,
no Berlin.
When's the Top Gun music coming in? It came in once towards the beginning, and then when it came in, I think when he was on the motorbike, iconically racing the plane as he arrived in the school.
That's a great score.
And then at the end, but yeah, no Berlin. And I actually think, do you know what? You're giving us a fucking replica of Iceman. Could you not give us a fucking Take My Breath Away when they were having their non-sex
Could you not
scene?
take our breath away for a second, please? What I liked though about the sex scene was that it was more of a pillow talk scene. Like it was a bit more mature, and they were talking about their feelings and emotions and stuff, you know, which is quite progressive.
I mean, he's an old man. Like, how long could he last? And like,
it's just mere
in fairness,
seconds.
but I just actually really liked. I think it's a good shorthand to be like, oh, they're actually characters with a long history, and then that makes the relationship more meaningful because the implication is they're together forever, and it just wouldn't have been believable because they kept saying like he was on base camp for 3 weeks. Like it just would have been so like it makes perfect sense that him and the teacher from the first movie aren't still together. He was like a young guy in his 20s. Like it was never going to last.
There was a little moment which I really liked, which really informed on his character, which was when he drops out of the window and the daughter says to him, "Don't leave her, don't hurt her again." And that was like, it felt really raw, and it really like makes you realize that Maverick isn't a great guy. Like he's a great fighter pilot, but he's kind of he's
break
flawed.
up though,
yeah.
and relationships can break up, and it doesn't mean that the person who broke up with the other person was a bad guy.
Oh sure, no, I'm not.
It just means he was in a place where he wasn't able to commit. But now that he's basically been benched,
all right,
and there's nothing else to do, now he'll stick around.
Let's wrap this up. We don't need to go into
a trope that like pilots fall for the kind of
for
the
bartenders,
base bar lady, isn't it? Because I guess that's like where there were so few women around traditionally, unless they were like other men's wives.
Are you just thinking of For All Mankind?
I'm really thinking of For All Mankind. Yeah.
All right, let's wrap this up. Let us know if you like this as much as we did.
I wish I could remember all the other things I wanted to talk about. Just like the sheer like edge of your seat, like how good the fight scenes were is just. They were actually the best bit. Oh no! Okay, so sorry, the scene when they're in Val Kilmer's study, which was really beautiful, I was bawling crying. And I said to Dave, I literally turned and said, wait, when are they going to do a volleyball scene? And then
it happened.
Scene,
yeah, it was American football.
No, it was a hard cut to a sweaty hand holding a ball on the beach.
Yeah. You called it incredibly.
I suddenly remembered, oh my god, they need to do the volleyball scene. And then it was so
like you were editing the movie live.
But it was so good because, okay, we said the movie needed to do a volleyball bit. Yeah, they didn't do volleyball, they did American football.
Totally different.
On the beach, Tom Cruise is topless, glistening.
Offense and defense.
Beating, for some reason, all these young people at football.
It's got all these brilliant cliches, but I love them. Like John Hamm comes out, what's happening here? And
I told you to train
you wanted
these.
A team? I'd give you a team.
And then they cut to all the men like holding Bob the geek up on their shoulders, and then the guy who was like Tom Cruise's kind of supportive trainer was like, you know, jumping in the fray, and like everyone's smiling, and John Hamm, like, I love that at the most, even in this movie. Okay, by the way, sorry, I know you said we were wrapping up, but the bit where basically John Hamm, as soon as Val Kilmer dies, John Hamm's like, you're done, you're out of here. And the mission, which they were supposed to fly in 2.5 minutes, he goes into the class and
then
says,
he flies
right,
it.
You're doing it in 4.5 minutes. And then
that was amazing.
They're all sitting there, and then because it turns out that screen we'd been watching the whole time is like a live feed from like their however way they've constructed this route they're going to do. And then Tom Cruise gets in and he goes, reset it to 2:15. He does it 15 seconds less. And for the whole movie I've been like, why isn't Tom Cruise just the leader of this mission?
And then you made it happen.
And then he does it in 2:15. That was the scene where I was actually on the edge of my seat. Like, I knew he'd do it, but
brilliant.
like they make like, and I truly think, I know Tom Cruise flies for a lot of this movie, but apparently in the training,
he actually blew up uranium in real life. Do you know that?
He was doing that like G training where it like makes you feel really heavy and sluggish, and like that thing where they were like, you have to get to 10 G because you're going like vertically. Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure Tom Cruise was doing that shit.
Oh yeah, you can't act that.
That's where you feel like,
you can't act like feeling really sluggish. Except I feel like that after a pizza.
But like the feeling of him doing that, and I guess that's where it comes in, where they're really doing this stuff. It felt so tangible, like, and watching them all watch him on the screen in the room.
Okay.
And I love all the Miles Teller stuff where it's like he stopped him going to university or whatever, flight university, and then he set his career back. I wasn't expecting that at the start. I actually thought he was already would have been a fatherly figure to him, which I guess he had been up until that point in their relationship. So I love that they had tension, that they had to come over.
I thought their whole dynamic was brilliant, and I loved, and I really wasn't expecting. I thought, right, Maverick's done, he sacrificed himself, that's beautiful, great end to the movie.
No way.
But actually, it's about Rooster's. It's about Rooster's arc is actually ignoring orders and not thinking, and I love that moment where they're down together and he says, what are you doing here? And he's like, what were you thinking? You told me not to think.
So
and that's the completion of his arc, and
then
I love
they
that.
get in and they fly a broken old plane off a broken runway.
That's where it felt very Mission Impossible as well. We're going to steal this plane from that thing and fly it over the thing.
And then Hangman comes in to rescue them, and it annoyed me. I was like, let Phoenix come in and rescue them.
Yeah, but it was kind of but you've got to resolve the Hangman.
No, he wasn't. Hangman
Rooster
was
tension, Kathy.
He didn't though. Hangman was a peripheral character. Like, I didn't need for him to have character.
But they didn't
resolution.
set up anything with him and Phoenix because she was his friend already. Like,
yeah, but
what
that would have been nice. Why couldn't she have just come in and
because
saved
they
him?
have to have the handshake at the end. You have to have the firm handshake.
That's photographed and then framed immediately in Tom Cruise's office. All Tom Cruise's office is just photographs of him and various sweaty men shaking hands with each other.
When they hugged at the end and he said, "Thank you for saving my life," and he said, "My dad would have done the same," that's when I cried.
Oh God, yeah. No, but I thought Tom Cruise then should have said, "Your old man would have been so proud of you." And I feel like,
come on, how much ham do you want served? There's already John Hamm in this movie. You want fucking egg and chips
I love
as well?
how macho John Hamm's character is, where, like, by the way, like, John Hamm was, like, totally fine. I just didn't think he was very interesting casting for it. But I love at the very end, even when they complete the mission, he still doesn't smile. He just nods his head. He's like, that's all I'll give you.
That's the cool thing to do.
I think
no,
Ed
but the
Harris
guy
should have
next
come
to him was going like, "Yay,
I love
hello."
the guy next to him. But I think then Ed Harris should have come back in and been like, you're all fired.
No,
and that should have been the end of the
Ed
movie.
Harris comes in and says, Mike, I've ended the drone program. The US military will now only fly planes with humans.
And only Maverick will fly all planes at all time. But I think, like, the whole point of this movie is, like, if he's the best pilot in 40 years outside of Val Kilmer, you really do need drones.
You need drones,
you
guys.
Don't have enough pilots.
Also, maybe just don't have, foreign intervention by the US military.
Or maybe just
anyway,
don't have a school called Top Gun.
No, here's a sequel pitch for you. Top Drone, okay? And we have the best goddamn drones competing against
Dave,
each other. I'd
can
watch
drones
that.
play with
It's
sweaty balls on a
It's
beach?
like Robot Wars, and then you get your man from the fucking.
You've ruined the review, Dave. Now you've ruined the review.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Follow us at the Cinemile and. Email us, thecinemail@gmail.com. We love an old email.
And head over
let's chat
to
about this movie
wherever you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, wherever it is, and, like, follow us, because I think the algorithm's gone all funny because we didn't release a lot of episodes last year, and a lot of people are saying our episodes aren't coming into their feeds. So go in and follow us and leave us a review. You haven't already, please. We'd really appreciate it because of that darn old algorithm.
Yeah, gosh darn algorithm. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.
Having any fun yet?
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What do you do when no one else is watching? What do you do that makes you happy for no reason at all? What are you obsessed with? I'm Leslie Arfin, and I'm a writer, but I'm also a dancer, a painter, a vapor, a dollhouse enthusiast, and basically just an overall hobbyist. My podcast, Filling the Void, is all about what other people are fanatically into. We talk about hobbies, even if you don't have one.
Listen to Filling the Void on Tuesdays on the Erios Network and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.